I want to continue now by talking about these two different kinds of paint, because Golden were the company who introduced golden fluid acrylics. That's this one, which is in consistency similar to our free flow, and then they subsequently introduced golden, what do they call it, high flow acrylics, which are very, very liquid. Now, if we come to the Australian brands that have started to appear, they all seem to have gone for the high flow sort of formula. So I think we should do a comparison, let's say, with some golden high flow Hansa yellow. Now, you can see how it runs. It's very runny, so that's probably very good for some mixed media techniques. And if you brush it out, it's pretty strong. Now, if you come over here, this is one of the Australian brands. Can you see what it is? I need to give it a shake. It's not as strong as the golden one. Now you need to do these comparisons yourselves, especially if you have a group workshop and some people will have one brand of paint and some people will have another brand, and you can easily find out which brands have the strongest colour and what suits your purpose the best. Now this is the global one, so I'll go across to the other local brand apart from ours is Matisse. Give it a shake, because obviously a liquid paint is going to sink to the bottom a little bit and it'll be a little bit weak. It doesn't seem to be necessarily a whole heap better than the flip top thing that we already have. So that's the Matisse one. And Solid Blue, and of course it's very runny. If you tilt the page, it's going to run all over the place. Now, let's have a look at the free flow one in comparison. Of course, if you want to have it down at that liquid consistency, oops, well, I try to avoid disaster, but it always catches up with me. Anyway, I've got a nice little pond of Solid Blue now, haven't I? I think you can see it. If I want to make it run, I only have to dip my brush in it and it'll run. So in our case, because we're living in this little place called Australia, we had to make do with one kind of viscosity for liquid paints, and we've chosen the one that's, I think, going to be more useful. I hope it is anyway. Now I think we might have to stop to do a little bit of cleaning up here in a minute. So I've taken you through the different containers. I thought these were terrific, and maybe I discovered maybe they've got problems. They do get clogged up if you don't wipe them or something. So I'll have to investigate that more before we rush out and spend $1 million buying new kinds of caps. We haven't really looked properly at Golden's thicker version. So that's Golden Parole Orange, and what am I putting? I'm putting out Free Flow Parole Orange, so that you can make a judgment about whether they have similar strengths. Oh, that's very strong, isn't it? So I'm generating a few bubbles, so I need to slow down the way I'm working with the brush. But anyway, you can see that although you may have a small bottle, you've got a lot of pigment in there, the golden paint. Now over here, it's a bit smoother. It's funny, it's a slightly different shade of pearl orange, isn't it? But very much the same strength of colour, I think you'd find. And when you do this, if you have a workshop with a group of people and you've got different kinds of paint, you'll soon work out which are the strong ones. Now I'm muddying this because my mixing water is pretty dirty now, but you can see how that flows. It just flows like crazy. If you want to do, that's why it is possible to do watercolor effects. So I'd better talk about that. Well, do I need to talk about that later, or do I need to talk about it now? It's hard to tell really how to format all of this. We're looking at the consistency. Just forgive the fact that this is a messy brush, but you can see the watercolory types of effect that you can get. And I'll show you some watercolors that I've done and some gouaches that I've done later on. And to me, that is the most interesting thing really about free flow, is that you can use it to make kind of fake gouaches and fake watercolors. When I say fake, I mean done with an acrylic paint instead of being done with a traditional medium, which is tricky to use. Now, obviously, if you're a watercolorist and you're very experienced, or you're a very experienced gouache painter, you're going to be a bit annoyed probably at the idea of an acrylic paint creeping up on you and stealing some of your advantages, let's say. But if you're an acrylic painter, then I find anyway that it's much easier to do a fake watercolor or a fake gouache than to try to do the real thing, which is very hard to manage because it wants to re-wet all the time. And in particular, gouaches, it's about time I cleaned this up, I think. In particular, the gouaches are very easy to do because you can overpaint wherever you want to. With the imitation watercolors, you have a problem that if you make a mistake, you really can't correct the mistake. You have to imitate the surface of the paper by letting the paint dry, apply a coat of white to get back the whiteness of the paper that you've messed up, and then you can put a wash over the top of that and maybe correct a mistake that you've made. But it's not as easy to do as a gouache technique where you just keep going as you would with acrylic, because it is acrylic and behaves like acrylic. Alright, so I think I've probably done enough talking about the different strengths. I don't think you'll find anything to complain about the strength of free flow or the strength of the golden paints. And to me, it's not very difficult to add a bit of water to a very movable kind of paint. Whereas if you pick on the thinner type of paint, you really can only do mixed media things with it. You can't really do a painting as such with that kind of paint.